Good. Yeah.
Collabs. My name is Celeste and I'm joined today by the fabulously talented Radim Malinic. He's a creative director and a designer who runs a branding and creative studio called Brand New. As well as working for clients, Radim has actually released and designed and published a number of books. In 2016, Radim released his first publications called The Book of Ideas Volume 1, and last year he followed this up with a follow-up book, Volume 2. These books could be described as journals of creative inspiration. Today, Radim's going to be guiding us through the process of how he created the cover artwork for the Book of Ideas Volume 2 using Adobe Stock, Photoshop and InDesign. We'll be talking about the whole process of creation today, from ideation right through to the finished design. Radim's brought a number of signed copies with him today, and we're going to be giving these away to people who want to engage with us via the chat. So please do feel free to ask Radim anything you want to know, either about his creative process or how to go about publishing a book. So Radim, just to start, we obviously have had a chance to sort of get to know each other a little bit, but if you could start by telling our audience about a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the Adobe Collabs.
Thank you for coming, that's
Thanks
brilliant.
for having me, it's a pleasure.
Great.
And thanks for giving us the opportunity to actually show more behind what's behind the scenes. So my name is Radim Malinic, I'm a Czech-born creative director, designer, occasional author, even more occasional public speaker. I run Brand New, as you said, my creative and branding studio. It's gone through many different incarnations over the years of me being a freelancer. That was my freelance moniker, and then I've grown it into a more of a studio, more of a sort of bigger sort of agency offering. And throughout those times when I was as a freelancer, I always, on top of my client work, I was always trying to make more sort of promotional tools, come up with ideas that, what can I send to people who may commission me, like art buyers or studio managers or clients? Like, what can I send them, which would be more of a tangible thing? Because
did you start off by publishing a very sort of small printed portfolio?
I did actually, yeah, I did, because I mean, as a freelancer, you're always struggling with a bit of budget, so you're thinking like, what's the most impressive thing, or the most most sort of budgety budget in a way. So I used to call them books, but they were glorified brochures more or less. They were just like little small things like A5 brochures. And what really happened at the time, because it was the advent of iPads and everyone was running around London with their portfolio on iPad, I wanted something that I can leave behind. I mean, it's a technique that people have been using for hundreds of years.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is by all means nothing new.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to create something which it would be difficult for people to actually throw away.
Yeah.
So it was for me, on the way of top of my client work, it was more like actually using things and techniques that I knew about printing that actually I can put into practice, rather than wait for clients and say, well, why don't we try to do X, Y, Z? And for me, it was like, let's do foiling, let's do spot UV and that kind of things that we're kind of showing the wealth of knowledge. And I think just like what can be done with the medium.
Yeah. So can you tell us about the inspiration behind the books? How did you decide what kind of tips and tricks you were going to sort of put inside?
So
them?
That's a good question actually. Sort of the first few books, I mean, there were literally, I think there was like 3 of like 64 pages. It was just pictures only. It was just like, look at me, I'm a sort of designer, illustrator, look at me, what can I do?
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I put an interview in one of the books, and like I think I did an interview for some sort of website. And a friend of mine said, hey, I really like the book because there was something to hear about. Something personal, actually, making it a real book rather than just a flip book showcase. At that time, I started doing public speaking and doing more sort of design conferences. And I was quite terrible at it at the beginning, as pretty much everyone would kind of contest to their sort of career. But through everything I do, creatively or professionally, I try to find efficiency. Like when you see yourself making the same mistake over and over again, you're like, surely there must be a quicker way. I mean, surely not everyone does the same thing like the way I do. So I was trying to sort of chisel down the process to most effective. And most kind of mindful also, because it's easy to get yourself lost by getting a brief from a client and then going into the production, and so that's kind of how I did this. You know, like I just kind of observing the conversation with my friends, listen to their problems, listen to my problems, kind of, and trying to sort of kind of write a book that's kind of hybrid between design and actually and the person behind the process, because we see these books on design shelves and of the beautiful bookshops that exist, and it's about one thing alone, like a typography grid and stuff. And I kind of wanted to write a journal of.
How did you start the process of getting it done? So once you had your creative idea, did you go straight into Photoshop, for example?
No.
So we're going to be talking today about how you created the cover. So
yeah, we'll talk about it really shortly. I mean, the book was actually mainly written on my phone. I was actually going around and making notes and thinking. Even kind of deciphering what I call the Facebook philosopher, when people post these amazing quotes about like, so
a lot of inspiration.
And then you read it.
Gathering your inspiration.
And people just scroll. Whereas I'm thinking like, well, these quotes have been said for a reason, they mean something. So I'm just trying to decipher what it means for creativity, what it means to me, kind of drill down into it, like, what is it? What can I find there?
What does creativity mean to you, as it were?
So I mean, publishing a book, it's no easy feat. I spent 4 years making notes, just wanted to make sure that what I'm thinking, what I'm processing, actually it does work.
Yeah.
So I did that.
So it's a labour of love to get all this content together.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to look at now is actually, how did you put it together?
Yeah, how do I put it together?
So all of this fantastic information.
Yeah, because I mean the process was really long, but I worked with the printers. I mean, I have to say that the books are self-published. They're published from my own company, from my own publishing imprint. Sounds very fancy.
Absolutely, it's great.
And I worked with the printers directly. I had my own budget, what I wanted to invest into the book. They created a dummy. We settled on 256 pages. And as I was writing the book and I was kind of starting to work on the process, I wanted to create a cover to motivate myself.
How did you get into doing that?
Yeah, I mean, through my incarnations as a creative, I've worked on book covers for big publishers, and it's a crazy story. I mean, you can be doing 50 different covers and they could never be enough, and someone says something and it's never enough. So when it came to creating my own book cover, I was like, right, where do you start? Yes. Because again, everything.
Where did you start for this particular cover?
Because anything be anything. So it was a lucky accident. I can show you a file, which was a poster file. Actually, it was a poster I created for one of my clients in. Let's see if I can do it that way. So I've got a client in a town called Uppsala in Sweden, and we created this poster literally. I think I do like every 6 months I do a poster for them. As you can see, this was in 2015. It says winter. I can't spell. This is meant to be in Swedish. So it's always like winter in a company. The club is called
Winter 15. Fantastic.
Winter 15, and it's just like a little sort of type around it. Yeah. And I remember having lots of stock imagery left over from some mass download where I just wanted to create these clusters of these weird flowers. So if I was to open it in Photoshop, I can show you.
So these clusters are all created from kind of scratch, as it were?
They're created,
pieces?
they're literally like a stock imagery. We don't have to load any fonts. But yeah, these clusters were created one by one. Like, so not created, but like there's a stock image, separated, recolored. And as you can see, like some of the sort of pictures, some of the layers that I've got were kind of clustered together just to give them more of an effect of like a sort of alien flower.
They're very sort of layered and detailed, aren't they? And they produce these beautiful shapes at the end. The
beautiful thing that what happened here that I've found pretty much by accident, I've just downloaded these shapes, that they were sort of my hard drive for God knows how long.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is that the imagery that I'm using, it's a nail varnish. So it was just a simple nail varnish.
You'd never know it was a nail varnish.
Nail varnish.
I mean,
I have ever since many questions about what is it, how is it, and I really wanted to.
It looks like a kind of paint splash or a sort of.
Exactly, and the reason why I've gone for stock for both times, because for the first book and the second book, because I work really fast. I work on multiples of clients, so I'm just literally just trying to hide these. Work on multiples of clients at the same time. I just can get it more closer. And I wish I had time to sit down and make my own sort of elements, but stock imagery exists for a reason. So I just wanted to kind of speed up my workflow, see what I can do.
Yeah.
And as you can see here, these individual objects just really gel together. And what is that sort of detailing inside really proved quite important because it's a texture, right? It's something. And if I was trying to recreate it myself, I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah.
So I've
so you've used the kind of stock assets really just as a starting point for your own creativity.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of I mean, trends in digital illustration come and go. You know, you see people making their own stuff, people bending things, and people multi-layering things, and it kind of like, it's as exciting as it is, it also can get quite oversaturated in terms of like how many people use the same style, and someone makes something interesting and people go like,
so you obviously wanted to follow your own style when you were creating this piece?
It's almost like when you think of people write pop songs with the same chord structure, but it's a different song. It's like, how do you do the same thing but differently?
Slightly differently. Put your own spin on it.
Exactly, exactly. So,
can you show us how you used Adobe Stock? Did you use it right within the application, or did you use it from the website?
So, yeah, with this cover, what I did initially, I did a first initial mock-up. The cover happened in a way. I mean, I just like, I saw that on the cover and I thought, this is kind of good enough. It was a placeholder. I just never got around to replace it with anything that would be more enticing. And I went on like Amazon and I kind of those kind of websites and tried to place the thumbnail on the picture, on the screen, just to see what it would look like amongst the other things. And of course, some of the other book covers, they've got big type and they've got...
And you found it actually looked good? The strength of the texture,
it stood out.
The personality.
Yeah, because in the small thumbnail, like you don't really get to see the detail, but you see that there's something different going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like the art direction behind the initial picture was kind of inspired by print patterns, and it's something that I love as being creative on having design practice.
Textures and sort of things like that.
It also, like, you can do whatever you want. So I just thought maybe a fashion pattern on a cover would be fun. So when it came to making a difficult second album, which was the second book,
which is always very challenging, isn't it, to follow up the first one?
Yeah, because I thought the first
one did very well, didn't it? So you obviously had a sort of hard act to follow with the second publication.
It very surprised me, because I can be honest, that as soon as I finished the first book, I was ready to never do it again.
Yeah. But before you knew it,
people kept asking, people kept saying stuff, you know, like, well, when is the next book coming?
You're back on it.
Yes,
absolutely.
So I wanted to recreate, because it was the volume 2, which is what we're here for today. The volume 2 was kind of following. It was meant to be a set. I've teamed up with Adobe Stock to actually work on the publication. Yeah. And I wanted to use the whole process of this, because I've told you earlier, but I mean, no one heard it before. But I've been working with stock for best part of 15 years. Yeah. I've seen the advent of the new websites, of kind of simple. Like, I mean, Unsplash was just not even a simple idea before. Like, it's got all going back to.
You've used it in a lot of your sort of material now, haven't you?
Yes, I'm using it in my client work, because I used to do lots of sort of layered collages. I always found the process very cumbersome and very lengthy, because I would have to create a lightbox, then do mass download or singular download. It would be all over the place.
And we spoke a bit earlier about you using libraries, Creative Cloud libraries, to store all your images in.
Absolutely.
Maybe some of our viewers won't be aware about Creative Cloud libraries, so maybe we could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you start to build up a library of images that you wanted to use for the second book cover?
Yeah, so through my Creative Cloud account, I've got access to Adobe Stock. Yeah. And this is me, hello. And I've got libraries here throughout all of the different projects and clients.
Brilliant.
What I started initially, we've got a blank canvas here. So I went through search libraries. I can switch to Adobe Stock or Current Library, all libraries, and I can just type in paint, or I can type in anything I want, and it would come up. It's a sort of compact version of what we've got, the full experience. So, I mean, this is some of the imageries that I sort of used as a reference in a way. I wanted to see what other people did as a sort of floral patterns and print patterns, what is out there. But
so it was kind of your inspiration.
Yeah, you want to see what's out there, just because. It's the same like creating a logo. Like you can create the most amazing idea, thinking I've done this best, and then you log into Google and it just repeats. Literally, you've seen it. You've
seen it before, yeah. So you wanted to create something a bit different, I think.
Yeah, luckily I had the springboard of the first book, so I knew kind of that it was going to be following this pattern, but I wanted to see what was there. So,
what did you start to search for when you started searching?
As you can see, a bit of a giveaway. You can really try to get lost in the search, because it's almost like this preparation for the big day. It's just you want to kind of observe what's there. Because there's literally millions of images.
Absolutely, it's
and
getting to the heart of the collection, isn't it?
And sometimes it could be quite easy just to go and go, yeah, it's this one, it's fine, the search is over.
Why wouldn't that particular image, for example, have worked well for you? What was it that you were looking for?
Yeah, so in my particular sort of plan was that we were creating an image which had a sort of a texture grain. So I could find a texture grain in more of images like this particular one, this emerald green, fashionable colour. What I was looking for is the texture, as I mentioned earlier, because what I've decided to do throughout the different printing of the first book is to actually smooth out the cover design with oil paint filter in Photoshop. That's what I decided to do.
And we can see that here on the book, that beautiful kind
actually
of
you can see it on both of them. So what I wanted to create is just like, I wanted to use Photoshop in the most paint-like way, because as a designer and a sort of digital sort of comp artist, I would just layer things together. I use lots of retouching techniques, but this is the kind of most it feels like it could be done with a film.
Kind of very natural way
like a sort of, if you had
putting things together.
I guess like a rainbow paint, so that would be it. But rainbow paint doesn't exist, does it?
Great. So how did you start to build this design in Photoshop?
I have created myself a library, so apparently I got signed out, amazingly. So let's do it again. Hopefully it will work. If it doesn't, what did happen? I just didn't look. There we go. I'm back.
Great.
So I would go and choose my selection. I would say save to library. It would ask me which library. Book of Ideas Volume 2.
Yeah,
very handy. That happened. So I would build up the selection of kind of rough cuts. None of these images would be like 100%.
No.
Like that's the one. I will never stick with it because
like a kind of light box of images that you wanted to use.
Absolutely, it's a light box.
To play around with.
Yeah, it's a light box, and it's a crude selection because sometimes you never know if you might be using just a piece of a little element of this or using a texture because happy accidents are really fun.
Very good.
But to recreate it again is really hard.
Absolutely. So you had to sort of choose the images that you wanted and then drop them into Photoshop. Is that what you did?
That's exactly what I did.
Build up your kind of montage.
So I knew from the first book that obviously I knew from my finished canvas what sort of size I'm doing. Yeah. So I might have my guides here. So I just created a big canvas and in InDesign, I've created a type layout, so I'll show it to you here. I think quickly we've got it here. So I've got a type layout, which kind of gave me a rough idea of where I wanted to go. Right. So that's the good start. That's the easy bit. Like this is the grids and numbers.
Once you've got that sorted, and you've got the creative space to play around with.
Exactly. And also, it was quite lucky because I already knew the title and everything, so I knew what I was doing there. Right. However, to recreate the cover in a new way and actually find a way of making it engaging, making it interesting, and actually balanced between the type and everything, it's quite hard. So, quick way, I'll show you how I created one of the clusters and kind of like the method of what I would use. So, from my library, the icon has changed recently. It used to be like a CC logo.
Yes.
Now it's gone to a library. I was looking for it the other day.
It's library's logo, isn't it?
I can't find it. I can't find it.
To show you it's all there in your library.
It's all there. So I'll hide the guides. I have to really say that you won't see me sort of using many of the sort of menus and things.
No,
because
that's fine. We can ask, for all our viewers out there, we can ask Radim to share his keyboard shortcuts with us.
I would be happy to show you my keyboard shortcuts. So it kind of goes...
So anyone that's not familiar can learn a few tips and tricks.
Yeah, because it goes really like with the whole method of being more efficient in what you do.
Absolutely.
Because I found myself throughout the years going like, okay, I need image this, image that, and it's just like when you find yourself that you're almost like automating the tasks.
Yes.
It's like
get into it quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like how can I actually focus on what I'm doing with and pressing keys like a musician, right? Like someone that doesn't pay much attention to what I do. So I've created myself like, for example, custom shortcut for hiding things. I've got a custom shortcut for apply and mask, which it's pretty useful. Renaming layers. Hello, Adobe. It's all very simple, and it really helps. And also, I've got another.
It helps speed up your creative process.
Yeah. So I just, for example, converted a layer into a smart vector layer, and it's kind of working in a non-destructive way. But firstly, let me show you how to do the
bring the shapes in.
Bring the shapes. So I would normally press W for a mask for like a magic wand.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember having used Photoshop for so long that magic wand used to be always hated.
We've got the magic wand. We've got different ways to select things now.
I remember going to presentations where guys were like, "Oh, just magic wand," just like because normally what would happen? Normally I would take a pen tool
and draw around.
So I just zoom into it, and it kind of. I used to be super excited about like gathering my stock images before like years ago. And spending a good couple of hours.
Yeah, it takes a long
kind of
time.
Like you can actually speed up. I mean, if you know what I mean, it's not obviously fantastically precise, but you can speed up and you can actually have a nice mask. And it's used by retouchers. It's used people like that who really need a clean
sort of edge.
Cutout. Yeah. Whereas with the recent additions,
absolutely.
Select Subject. I mean, come on.
Select Subject is fantastic.
Select Subject. It's here. It's there. I mean,
it's been released in the last. Version of Creative Cloud, so for you guys who haven't tried it, it's a very quick and easy way to cut your subjects out in the click of a button.
Can I believe if we click Select and Mask?
Fantastic. It uses the power of artificial intelligence running behind to select the key focus of the image.
It's absolutely amazing because especially like I remember like cutting out hair.
Absolutely, it can take a very, very long time.
And it's
many hours of your life.
It's also, you never know if you got it right. I mean, it's just
absolutely.
I found this edition, especially recently, like this has been absolutely amazing. So
fantastic. So once you've got your images,
so we got active mask, as you can see the ant army going around.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'll mask it. I mean, because I'm using Adobe stock via library. It's a non-destructible element, right?
Yeah.
If I was to bring it in from I've got my stock imagery here, stock images, so I've got a copy of these. If I was to bring, let's say, another image here, it's going to bring it as Adobe, so it's going to bring it as a vector stock layer, but a vector smart layer. If I was to rasterize it and use it differently, and do the mask, and but it's a bigger image. Use that, and I can decide to do Command J to create a copy of that mask. As you can see, I've got just a layer on its own, but now it's a bitmap layer. So every time I would rescale it up and down and change it, I would be losing the information. So I can help myself by converting it into a vector smart object, just to do that. But luckily, the workflow has been so much improved that
it sort of does it for you now.
It does it
as
for you.
you bring in your images, absolutely.
So it kind of helps you. If you just
speed up that workflow, basically.
And kind of actually stop maybe pulling your hair out, because when you think like making mistakes,
you up, doesn't it?
Making mistakes sometimes can be quite sort of time costly. Actually, can take quite a lot of time. So we've got, let's say we've got one element. Let's bring another one in.
How many elements did you layer up for all of these different shapes?
I'll show you very quickly, because it's kind of a trial and error. I mean, there's a lot in my work which is based on reasons, based on geometry, based on numbers, based on things that are sort of, you can go back and kind of decipher the reasons. This particular aspect, it's more about how you create weird and how do you create the unusual. And in this case, it was like, okay, so again, I'll press W. It was more like, okay, how do I layer up things, and there's no right or wrong.
No, I mean, absolutely.
This is sometimes a bit of a downfall.
Sort of trial and error and putting things together. And
sometimes could be a bit of a downfall because you never know when you're finished. Right, so what we'll do...
What looks good.
So what I did, so I'm just pressing a bracket, open bracket, so you can see my brush is getting bigger. What I'm going to do, I'm going to brush out... there's the wrong layer, isn't it? Oh yeah, sorry, that's the wrong one. We're going to go white.
Yeah.
So we're going to lose a part of this. So I'm going to mask out what I don't want.
Yeah.
So what I did, I created these, added these elements, and I might actually help myself by rasterizing the whole thing, because I'm actually for reshaping. So rasterize layer, here we go, apply a mask, right click, apply layer mask, sorted. Right. As you can see, they're all a bit brown, but the outcome of the image is...
Yeah, it's definitely not very brown, is it?
So it's not very brown.
How did you go about changing the colours?
So, changing the colours were normally created, if I was to do, creating a colour... Initially, I used just a hue and saturation.
Yeah.
Again, nothing really scientific.
What type of colours were you looking for when you were choosing the colour balances?
It's going to sound a bit silly, but all the bright ones. Or
bright
just,
colours,
I just wanted to have something really...
bright and vibrant.
Yeah, I did, because the first book, it was kind of, I wanted to make them night and day. You know, like we all dream
something
about
light
making
and
things
bright and
continuous.
something
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as a publisher, as well as a sort of designer and a writer, I decided that the book has to kind of have a bit of a sort of a standout value. And it can sound a bit cliche, but I tried a lot of different colours of the background before, but I think if I was traditionally published and I was supposed to say, okay, I'm going to go for a pink book with random multi-rainbow.
So it's a creative exploration because you could.
Yeah, because I could, and I kind of wanted to sort of prove that it's okay to publish a book with a sort of slightly weird
different cover. Fantastic.
Yeah, so initially I just went into literally hue saturation. As you can see, I'm using hue saturation, a mask to a layer.
Yeah.
And what I did, and I'll show it to you again, because I'll do work really quickly. So I'm holding my Option key, clicking on the sort of yin-yang, would you say? And clicking hue and saturation. What it will do, it will ask me if I wanted to clip it to my object below.
Yeah.
So at the moment, so if I was to change the color, it literally just changes the color on the layer.
Yes, that's right.
You can also do it by pressing, I think it's a Shift Apple G. Yeah, Shift Apple G. And as you can see, we're kind of getting the similar green color here.
To get the greens
going. And there's no shame in literally just going a little bit. The word, can I use the word obscene? on the green, on the like hue and saturation, just literally ramp it up as high as possible.
There,
why not?
That color.
And the same thing here with the Hello Adobe layer, which is named. Same process. Hue and saturation.
We talked a little bit about printing tips, didn't we? So in terms of not making things too dark and sinking into the paper, what did you do to sort of really brighten those colours up?
Yeah, let's put this one. So literally, this is the simple method of doing this. We'll talk shortly about how I sort of filter out all those sort of layers. Because the cover is printed on a silk paper in CMYK, so it's a cyan, magenta, yellow and black. And there is no, I mean, what I wanted to do and what I've learned throughout the process of making these books is just kind of having an image that prints in really crisp quality, just really crisp. And sometimes even in colors like these and like in the pink, if you were to choose a color just out of a color picker, I mean, let's have a look what we got here. I mean, if I was to press I for eyedropper and info, as you can see, I've got 25% of magenta and 4% of yellow. Yeah. It sometimes like a 2% or 3% of cyan creep in or 2% of black creep in. Yeah. And you find yourself with like a sort of speckly colour and it just doesn't work
clean
right.
It up a little bit.
Yeah. So this was the simple process of creating a cluster, but then when it came to actually creating
the cover artwork.
I mean, you see, obviously you've seen my other file, which is literally hundreds and hundreds of shapes. Kind of just putting them together, like what I can find in the shape.
Was there a sort of design behind how you put them together, or was it very much trial and error in terms of what you felt?
I'll be happily honest to say it was a trial and error. I mean, it's kind of like once I had the color spectrum, it was kind of working on the basis. Is this green, yellow, pink, green? Kind of like it's just how does it follow? Because throughout, I knew that this process was always tailored to be run through an oil filter. So the oil filter was always going to smudge the colors into one another. And that was kind of the beautiful thing about it, because I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to be exactly precise. You know, it kind of just be a trial and error.
And do you like using all the filters in Photoshop? Is that something you like to do with some of your other artworks?
Yeah. I was lucky that I have learned from different people on my sort of, let's call it, career journey. So I've learned from graphic designers, I learned from a print studio, I worked with retouchers, working on art campaigns, and all of this really adds to a different sort of skill set in a way. Because you can be a typographer and use Photoshop in more sort of like photorealistic way. And I mean, no one ever knows everything. That's the thing. No one ever knows all the filters. The problem is, for example, because the book cover is for CMYK print, it's only a handful of filters that you can actually have in.
Was there a particular reason behind the oil filter, or was it just something that you really liked the look of?
I'm probably stylizing something. It was just I used the oil filter on a campaign on an album campaign, and they wanted to have a picture of a lake which looked like an oil painting. Yeah, lovely. So I just downloaded a picture and just pressed oil paint as many times, and it just looked this There's a bit of a process look sometimes to all filter, especially if you use it across a big coverage of an image. So it can be sometimes a bit predictable. Whereas I think with these layered images, with these sort of more graphical approach, it really kind of produces more of a sort of actual abstract digital layer.
Textures.
So these, as we talked about earlier, like these images were sort of selected from a stock photo, were added here. As you can see, like the curve on some of these shapes.
How did you move them? Can you show us how you move them around?
I'll happily do that, yeah. Because it's not perfect, so I'm thinking like, okay, what can I do? So we've got 3 ways of doing this. So we've got, I can go Apple T or Command T.
Yeah.
Because I guess
Transform,
this is normally called the Apple button, isn't it? So it's Command T, and as you can see, I've got a bounding box, and I can click down here. I mean, I've got it again, as you can see in my
your particular setup.
Workspace is customized because again, I don't want to be going up. And if someone can see, I've got my tablet size of window, so because I work on a much bigger computer, so it's a lot of hand movement, but also enables you to do some strokes and make a nice color. So we've got a warp, so I can click down here on my toolkit, and I can move this. As you can see, like it's moving the object all together.
Right,
it's moving it there.
It's fantastic. So have you used the Puppet Warp tool?
I have tried to use this in this process. Puppet Warp is Edit, Puppet Warp.
Yeah.
As you can see instantly.
How did you find that worked when you were trying to look at that and moving the details?
It's kind of like preferences. It's like how many sugars do you like in your tea, really? It's just like, it would be kind of
gives you a lot
to you,
control,
like,
doesn't it, around the edge?
Because, I mean, I love that in a Puppet Warp, I mean, you can literally just go a bit crazy and you can just, you know, kind of be very precise and customized, and I think
for dots where you want them,
because it's Puppet Warp's good for sort of moving things like same object. However, I think for this particular one, it was more about the shape and the flair. So we had the warp, we had Puppet and Puppet.
And did you use liquify as well?
I did use liquify. I mean, liquify.
Briefly,
We talked about liquify earlier, but. As before the broadcast, you didn't miss it here. Liquify is quite CPU intensive, so especially on this image. I mean, this image is about.
Not go into it today, then.
I mean, liquify is very good for retouching. But I'll show it in the end because obviously, as you can see, it's making a really small.
Small adjustments.
So liquify can be found in. Filter, liquify, and it's one of those that actually works in CMYK space.
Great.
So. When I've kind of put all of this together, sort of these clusters, and I run numbers of tests, kind of thinking, is this? I mean, I've sent this preview image to my sister, and she was like, "Ooh, maybe a bit too much. You know, too much and too little." Because in this particular process, it's just to make it look pretty. I mean, it really
something you really wanted to look like a really nice
image.
Object, nice image.
So there was no real like, okay, stop now and do this. And I used to have. Some extra textures.
Maybe it's different from answering a challenging client brief, for example, where you've got to sort of have an end goal in mind. This is much something you could play around with for yourself.
Absolutely right, because actually, you just when you become a client yourself, it just gets so hard. It just like because no one to keep tabs on you, like how long the process should take, how much you should do, where should you stop, and as designers, especially creating these creating beautiful stuff in Photoshop. You never finish because you can always and kind of it's the same. Luckily, I mean, luckily we're not alone because when I speak to my musician friends and they're like,
same thing. Keep going.
I can play on this. Literally, I can be finessing this track forever, and like so. It's sometimes a print deadline or actually a hard deadline is quite useful because I knew when I had to go to print and I couldn't actually play with it anymore.
And how hard was it to kind of pull the publication together? Obviously, for someone who's not produced the publication, people may not be aware that actually it's a labour of love to sort of produce the flat pan, put all the content together. Can you talk a little bit about that process for us?
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, I'll close the loop on the cover.
Yeah.
So what I've done initially, literally, I would, for example, select a piece. No, that's the wrong one. Press M for quick selection tool, and literally just take a piece. Then there's a shortcut, Shift, Command, and C, which copies the section of my canvas, and literally I just take the snapshot of it. Because if I was to press just Command C, it would just copy the current layer.
Okay.
So I would copy that, then come back to my test file. This is actually called test oil, as you can see. literally all of the elements and experiments that I was sort of working on. It's like, what... oh, look, we're trying to find number 8.
Nice. Nice.
It's kind of working with it, like, just to see how I can, how it behaves, because I'll show you literally live how, if I was to select this layer 13 and go filter, stylize, oil paint,
Yeah.
this is the magic bit. This is really fun. So as you can see, I mean, this is a big image, so it's going to be
Take a little time,
bit draggy, but and also like the setting is very small. So again, just like with here on saturation, just go big.
Go in and
Go big, because it needs
tweak it all around.
Yeah,
Do
and
what you want to do.
the only thing that kind of gives away the effect is,
Mhm.
like I'm pointing here in the preview panel,
Yeah.
is the bristle detail. So if I actually get rid of the bristle detail,
Yeah.
and there was something on lighting,
Mhm.
right, this should start throwing some results. Yeah, if I click preview,
Yeah. There we go.
hey, that will do it. So yeah, as you can see, all of a sudden, I haven't got some crude imagery of
Yeah.
stock imagery. Like, it's just like, it goes to the point when people say, right, what did you press? What did you do? Like,
Yeah.
I want to know more. And the test of me knowing that I'm doing it right, and there's never really, doing
Well,
it
I'm just
right.
thinking we've got a couple of questions coming through here, actually, Radim. Are you happy to take a few questions?
I'm happy to take questions, yeah.
So we've got a question from Rufus saying, who was your biggest inspiration, both when you started out and now?
Wow. My inspiration was mainly music. So I was inspired by music artists. I was inspired by music covers. So my inspiration came from various genres of rock music.
Yeah.
Death metal and grindcore. I used to have a long
musician
hair and play a
background.
bass. Yeah.
Fantastic. We have a question. Are you self-taught or did you study art and design as well? Because obviously there's a lot of sort of painterly techniques coming through here. Questions around that.
I've got a great answer. I studied economics. I studied economics. So I'm very...
Never have guessed it, actually.
Very much
fantastic.
self-taught.
So very much self-taught, which is great
Yeah.
for people out there wanting to know they can do this as well. So what about, we have a question here about Adobe stock. Would you have been able to be as fast and creative without Adobe stock?
Not really. Not really, because, as I said, I've done years and years of doing this in a different way, and I found Adobe stock to be super useful. And actually, I just love having libraries. I mean, look, even in my libraries, if I say, let's say I'm working with I'm just trying to find, let's say, a company called Green Den, and I've got all my colors here, and we've got logos in others. It's the libraries and
keeps it all in one place.
It's just amazing because you can actually share it, and it just works seamlessly.
Yeah, it does work seamlessly. That's right.
And actually,
we've got a few more questions coming through. Actually, top 5 Photoshop tools.
Top 5 Photoshop tools.
Yeah.
I'll give you my top 5 adjustment layers. How about that?
Adjustment layers.
Adjustment layers, I'd have got some because, I mean, they've been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
And as I said, learning Photoshop from photographers, designers, retouchers, it really helps you to actually understand the method of how the color is sort of put together.
Yeah.
Of selective color, definitely number 1, and I'll be talking about it literally just in a minute.
Yeah.
Selective color is great. Channel mixer, and really, I mean, the result of me using these is a little bit of knowledge and then hours of trying them, actually finding out what it is.
Which ones
it's like learning them,
yeah.
learning a guitar chord, and then realizing if you move your finger, it sounds a bit different.
It's slightly different, Fantastic.
So, 5, I mean, it'd be hard.
We've got a question here about the top tip to iterate the efficiency of your creative process, and what's your favourite happy accident?
Finding oil filter. I think that'd be the happiest accident. It's just finding like the ways how things.
Very happy with the oil filter today.
No, I mean it's all very.
Good,
I mean it's accident. It's more about finding a shortcut or finding something that actually speeds up, because some of the most complicated things that you see in Photoshop are kind of done actually from the most simplest way, because as you've seen, there was no extra trickery in this. It was more about like
it's the way you built it up. And
I had my destination and I knew how to get to it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to take?
So I think we've gone through most of the questions actually. We've got a question about, are you 100% digital or do you do drawings and sketchings as well?
100% analog. I am very much 100% digital.
Yeah.
Any pen and paper is more.
You very much start from the bit behind the computer, as it were.
Yeah. Anything pen to paper is a strategy. It's writing down things and validating. So. Yeah. As I said earlier, I
more
did.
A digital artist rather than a sort of pen and paper. Yeah.
Making notes digitally. Yeah. I mean, I'm not very good at drawing. That's an admission. I drew. My handwriting's terrible.
Yeah.
It's we've got different skills, but because we've got this hardware and software, it's
That's
amazing
your skill, absolutely.
what we can do with it.
Yeah.
So
where do we get to? We pulled all the clusters together, didn't we?
Pulled all the clusters
talked about
together.
Bringing all the shapes in.
Brought it
Talked
back.
about applying all the filters.
Yeah.
What
we
talked
did
about
here.
Color profiles.
Yeah. So in the process of creating this, you can see like we've taken the snapshot into oil filters, and oil filters only work in RGB.
Yeah.
So if I was to create my image in RGB, I might possibly lose some information. Because pink signs and stuff, like the really acidy colors that work in RGB space don't work in CMYK, so I just kind of wanted to make...
obviously we need CMYK for finished print publication.
So what I mentioned about the split colors is it's kind of making sure that the information that I've got here, and I press information panel, as you can see, there is here in this particular space, I get a lot of values. So I've got, for example, if I go to pink, it says 446. As you can see, for some reason with my layers, I've got 4% of cyan, which I don't really want that to be in the end.
Yeah.
So selective colors, as you can see, what I've done here, in cyan channel, I've taken out a bit of yellow. In another selective, I've taken out black, so it is not as heavy. You can,
so you've been sort of really cleaning them up.
I mean, these are nuances, but we've gone from like 80% black into 40. So I mean, that's a major reduction in and actually getting less in there. Then as you can see in channel mixer, I've gone into the cyan filter, column, and I've pulled out yellow and magenta, so out of literally, it seems like it's only 4 colours.
Yeah, it's only 4 colours, but it created everything. So absolutely with printing.
Because the tones are created from...
The other thing we didn't talk about was your use of kind of spot colours. So I love the kind of reveal when you open the publication, you have this kind of hit of neon.
Yeah,
what's the kind of idea behind that?
The inspiration was Pulp Fiction. That was literally, that was a Pulp Fiction. If anyone knows the scene.
Pulp Fiction moment,
It's like Vincent.
Yeah,
it's there. So I mean, this was the idea. That you open the book and it's
got a flash of neon.
Initially, and again, I can talk about the inspiration. I was inspired by the Monzo card, because they've got this bright colour.
Just super bright.
I wanted to put this, the bright orange, on the cover.
Wow.
But
that would have been very, very
that would have been
eye-catching.
Yeah, I think you can just literally line the train workers at night because they'll be so bright. But the oil filter, because when I tried to use, and this is a quite useful tip, when I tried to use the oil filter transparently, is these edges that they didn't clean up so well. So going back to these adjustment filters, I know we've got 15 minutes left. It's literally just making sure that I've created the most vibrant mixture that is also compatible with the world of print.
Yes.
So my final shape, as you can see here, so this is what I've got from the whole process. I've incorporated some extra gold layers and stuff, and literally I've applied the filter bar 3 times on each layer just to see how it works. I brought it in as a single image, saved it as a PSD file, so my file looks like this, as you can see all of it. All the edges were used, as you've seen earlier, for extra shapes and kind of like a building site, It's like when you see a photo of a nice office and everyone's like, how do you keep it so clean? And all the messes behind them, So, final corrections, I don't know what I did here, but I just extra curve, just maybe sort of cleaning up the black.
Yeah.
So, that was my Photoshop file, and then to get it right for print, I went into InDesign.
Absolutely.
So,
very good. It's his 25th birthday, isn't it? So happy birthday InDesign, I think.
Happy birthday InDesign, yeah. You make good books, InDesign.
Absolutely, well done, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you see here is just literally working on the cover. I can show you...
Can you show your flat plan? I think that was really nice to share with people how you put the book together and all the content.
This is where,
So this is where your ideas got mapped out.
I was going to say, you can be moving things in Photoshop forever, and then you get to InDesign and you don't move anything for a week, you're just looking at it. And I think that, as Adobe Stock was very much my friend at the beginning of the process.
Yes.
As Excel spreadsheet was friend here, because I wanted to work out the rhythm of the book. I had three tips, and a double spread, 3 tips, double spread, case studies, like how many case studies I can assign, 6, 8 pages. And I was looking at this and trying to validate it for days and days and days. I think that's the same
Got a
snapshot.
question here about being a perfectionist, or does it mean you ever end up never finishing a project if you're a perfectionist? Is it possible to be a perfectionist, or?
You would like to think you're a perfectionist, but with a deadline, you can never reach
Never be a
it.
perfectionist.
Because luckily deadlines exist because
Time keeps
perfectionists.
going.
Yeah. So this is the final layout of the inner flat plan of the book, as you can see.
Fantastic. Could you zoom in a bit to just share with our viewers?
No, unfortunately,
That's a PDF.
just a screenshot. Yeah. But as you can see, what makes me happy, as you've seen throughout my work,
absolutely, yeah.
it's all about colours. I just love the colour.
It's very vibrant, very vibrant. It's fantastic.
This is what I wanted to do, kind of recreate the fan. You know, when you get when you go to a nice art shop and it's just a lovely colour.
colours, yeah.
No one said you can't do it.
Very clean and simple type as well, actually, which I like throughout.
Yeah.
You kept it very sort of simple and classic in a way.
The logic was that it's one idea on a page, one idea next to it as an image, and it couldn't be fighting each other. So it's just the simple sort of stuff, how much you can see.
So
but
working with
it's just it's just
typography and design.
Yeah, and especially because the type is out of a colour, so it has to be.
Yeah. Did we use Adobe fonts for these ones, or? Adobe fonts?
Didn't on this one, unfortunately. But
we used the fonts in your other projects.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to use fonts from before. Right. So what I did, go to my pages, and we'll go to the one I prepared earlier. So this was the final cover. So this is how I used it. I'll try to hide the line. It's Command and semicolon. Yeah. So, and as you can see here, it actually hides everything. This is my file. There was an Adobe stock logo, barcode. Barcodes have to be on a right-hand side of the back cover. That's the sort of traditional. Now you can go crazy and put it there, but apparently it's the scanning system is better there. And what I'll show you here quickly is my. I deleted it. That's why I had it earlier. Okay, revert. Because I was wondering why do I have extra layers there. So we're going to go back to the file, and I'll show you. So for the purposes of foiling, as you can see here.
Did you have that on a separate layer for a different plate?
Yeah, so
print plate?
So what I did, and as you can see, the jaggedy preview and InDesign, it just shows you quickly, because if you've got like 200 pages, the CPU would just go crazy. Yeah. But what I did, I created
a question for you in a moment, Radim, after this, but do share this first.
Yeah, I wanted to find the layer. So when it shows for foiling and for actually for any type of foil, you have to create the foiling layer on top of the CMYK image. It's in the PDF, but it has to be set to overprint. So when they print the image on the cover or on the paper, it just leaves an empty space, and the foil is actually put together on top.
There's a lot of nice techniques in this publication.
I've kind of luckily created myself this little playground where I can just go and create things. Yeah. So as you've seen, I'm just going to show it to the cover. So that's the cover. It was set up to, so if I was to click to the type and go attributes, over for print, you can find attributes in output, So it's kind of like...
it's really careful. It's really important just to set the file up really carefully at the end of the day. So starting from ideation, you've shown right the way how you've prepared this file for print.
Yes, and the little Easter egg that I've done, there's a little number 2, you can see it, I've made it really small. There's a little number 2 hidden in the dots, and
it's lovely.
Again, initially I wanted to just have a little sort of mishmash of things, which I think is saved on this layer. You can see it.
You can see the dots there. Yeah,
so this is the dots from like original idea, which was like just random. Yeah. But then I've decided actually, it might make more sense to have something actually kind of tangible. Yeah. So you asked about a spot colour.
Love the spot colour. It's great. Yeah, I've just got a question here actually. I'd like to know your thoughts on what you think are the best paths or sites or tools. Actually, this is could go anywhere, this question. Best paths, best sites, best tools for a developer who wants to become more design aware. So this is a question about how a developer may become more design aware.
Collaboration.
Collaboration,
if you don't know where you're looking, you can be looking everywhere. I've worked with developers, and I've learned about all the sort of technical jargon lingo about development, and I'm kind of looking at
Do you recommend any sites for inspiration or for someone to look at for creative inspiration?
I would find people whose work I like and ask them to collaborate with him. And I think, because it's kind of like...
So start with the process of collaboration.
Definitely, and I kind of actually sort of reverse engineer, because I mean, you might like one thing and someone will help you to decipher that element, and you can kind of move on to another, because I wouldn't want to start now today because the world is amazing. Apart from politics.
So many things out there.
But it's that there's so much amazing stuff that you can do. Just where do you look first?
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Okay. Do we have another question?
I think let's have to run through all the questions. Let's make sure we've gone through them.
So what I'll do, I'll show...
We talked about inspiration, didn't we? We talked about music. Talked about self-taught,
So I'll just show you, before I export this for print, so this colour, which is a bright acid, Pantone 805, which is technically it's the colour they print on fashion magazines. So when you see those really bright headlines screaming at you, it's printed out of this colour. As you can see, there's a stock difference, but on the screen it just looks like a little bit of a dull colour. So you have to trust your judgment and the Pantone colour book.
Absolutely, it always looks different on screen, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so the final, when I was to go, I will go export, export. There we go. Okay, where do you want to save it? Let's save it to my desktop. Save it as a print. And I used to use a different, what do you call it, like a layout software before, so for the last decade and more. And I always loved that with addition of new tools, even like recently XD, it's the same shortcuts. I just love that actually everything's really seamless.
It makes it easier across the board, doesn't it?
Yeah, so in here what I would do, I've got my setting for 300 bleed, so 300 dpi bleed, simple crop marks, whoever like...
Crops, your colour bars, print registration.
A little tip, don't bother with print registrations. I mean, it's literally like... the older you get, you realise there's no need to put the file name and registration bars, because what happens, the printers usually put the file on another sheet and they have their own registration marks. So we've got a bleed, and what I'll show you in output, as you see I've got my fogra, which is for a print. And in here, in my ink manager, so underneath outside output, ink manager, you can see that I've got a layer for foiling, so that will tell the printers what the foil is. It'll tell them that the colour on the inside is, what do you call it? Neon.
The neon, the Pantone, absolutely.
Yeah,
so it's been a really inspirational tour through all of this.
There's one more step. There's still one more step.
Go for the last step.
And there's a hidden tool. It's not really hidden. So to check that everything's been done correctly, it's Adobe Acrobat.
Absolutely.
Which is a pre-press. So would I help it? Absolutely, yes. So, I didn't do, apparently I was meant to update it. So that's why I was asking. So it has been updated, updating in my links, which is window links. This is going to be, okay, now I've got the layers on top. What have I done? Let's go, bring it here. So I just put it there quickly. Okay, I just seem to have like a double of the text. So what I wanted to show you, okay, is just to quickly...
we've got a couple of questions which I'd like to sort of ask before we run out of time. We've got a question. Have any more other books in the pipeline? We talked a little bit about visual branding and identity, didn't we, earlier?
I've got a new book coming out in literally a month. It's called Book of Branding,
Fantastic.
Guide to Identity Design. And
another question as well, but go talk about the book first, please.
So I just want to show you this. This is the heading updated. So what I'll show you quickly here in the pre-press. This is the best way to kind of check that everything's been done correctly. So I'll just put Fogra 28. That's fine.
This is top tips for all you book publishers out there.
With multi-layered type by accident. But what you can see here, I can actually now double check the values of the print. So as you can see, when I had an issue in the pink, there was like a 4%. Actually, there is 3% cyan.
Check your ink breakdown.
I can say that. So I can show you that certain stuff to attributes, which is by accident. It should be different else. This should have decided. This should have disappeared. But as it happens, when you do things live, things just appear.
Yes. No pressure.
No pressure. For some reason, we've got something there that shouldn't be there. But as you can see, it's there. But again, like that's the whole workflow. Like literally starting from Adobe stock,
through ideation,
Photoshop, InDesign, checking things in Adobe Acrobat, just making sure that when you send it off, The printers don't have to call you back
No, absolutely.
with any
You
questions.
don't need that.
Right, do we have
We've got
questions?
another question here about, do you think there's a lifespan on a design that is trendy, and is it better to go for a classic style rather than what's cool now? What's your thoughts about being trendy?
It just reminds me of music. So when you hear like the 808 or 303, again, it's a part of a time, sort of time span. But it's, I mean,
is it about creating something that stands the test of time?
I think there's always a sliver where you can actually have timelessness. Like when, I mean, this might look dated in 20 years, or this might look still fine. I mean, it just depends how other things around it kind of, because when things are done in abundance, they get a bit overdone, and that's why they come out a little bit out of style. I wouldn't even have to tell you which is classic and which is a trendy one. You know, I mean, as I said, the paintbrushes, you can go on Instagram or behind and see what's done to death and what still looks fresh.
Yes, there we go. That's great. I
More
think we're
questions?
about sort of wrapping up now. I think that's all the questions we've run through.
That's very,
Unless
very
you've got
good.
A couple of more minutes out there if there's any final questions for Radim or anything. So do feel free to ask us.
I can preview. This is the
preview.
This is the cover of my next book.
Preview of the book of branding. Brilliant.
Yeah. Again, it's not something I thought up. I mean, I wanted to write a book about branding for quite a long time. It's an interesting process, because if you ask me 3 or 4 years ago if I would be writing more than one book, I'd be like, never again.
One's
but
enough.
the process actually gets easier, because the longer you do stuff, it gets more exciting. You know, like the second book was, I mean, I was, and you know, when people talk about I haven't got time, we were renovating a house. I was trying to pass my driving test. I was doing all sorts of things, you know, like, and I still managed to design and publish a book. And
obviously you enjoyed it, and it was your passion. So obviously come through.
The life was crazy, but I managed to do it. And this time, again, like, we are busy with the studio work, working on all sorts of projects, and we've got lots of different clients. And
do you think it's important to keep your own creative work going as well as doing work for clients?
I think it's really following your heart. It really is following your heart, because our client work makes me super happy. Like we're having a field day every day. We're doing things that I always wanted to do. That wasn't the case 15 years ago. When I was working in a print studio, it was more about like how to keep your sanity intact. And now it's kind of like looking at what else you can do to find your expression in a way. Like that's what I found. And again, these books. The plan wasn't really like, okay, one day I'll have a couple of books and they'll have a fashion style covers on top. And it was just like, what is it that I can add in terms of voice, in terms of a message to this whole big melting pot of what everyone creates? Because everyone, I mean, the level of creativity out there today is absolutely incredible. I mean, I feel that I haven't got even 1% of what other people have, you know, which is fine, because I just find myself my own true voice in. This is my output, this is what I do, you know.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Here we go. We just have a few little things to finally, before we wrap up, just to announce the winners from who are going to receive a copy of Radim's book. We've got Rufus Jones, Anya Smat, and Dave Simkis. Hey. So if they can just look for the email address in the comments, and then we can arrange the delivery for you. So I just wanted to wrap up by saying it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much. We've talked about ideation to creation to publication. So thank you very much, Radim. That's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure and a blast. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Please do log on next week, same time next week, for next Adobe Creative Collab session.